All right, on today's episode, we interviewed Chris Edwards, where we talk through what it's like to basically go buy a very traditional vanilla kind of SBA story, right? He found a flooring company in Steamboat Springs, bought the company, doubled the revenue, right? And doubled the margins, actually grew the revenue, 50% and doubled the profits and made a very successful exit, right? And what it looks like to kind of go through the process of buying a retail business on top of that, right? Working through some of the mechanics operationally, working through some people issues, and basically ultimately finding a good success on the back end. So Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
Man, I always kind of like to hear the stuff that didn't work out, right? And so this isn't just a Cinderella story, right? He had a lot of challenges that he dealt with. But the one thing he did talk about, which is probably on all of our minds, is, oh my goodness, I have somebody that doesn't follow our culture, very valuable in the company, and I'm scared to let him go. And I think he covers this so well. And this is that lesson of entrepreneurship, is that not one person should dictate the success of your business.
Agreed. And, the other thing too is he was kind of coy, but I mean, he's a master of his business. He knew all aspects of the business because, again, you don't double revenue just kind of with a hand wave, right? There's a lot that goes into how do you scale a company to be able to double revenue, from the sales side to the implementation side, which we didn't even really get into what the install side looked like and all the challenges that has, because I'd imagine that's actually where you have even more challenges in these businesses. So all around, good story of just kind of understanding what it's like stepping in, buying a business, operating it, and then making that exit.
Hey guys, go ahead and just pause the podcast for a second. When you're buying a business, you need to ensure the financial health of the company. The quality of earnings is mission critical. It doesn't matter what size business you're buying. Patrick O'Connell Advisory Group, they're dynamic. They do a great job. They're going to look over your shoulder. They're going to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And this guy's done over 200 buyers successfully, just like you. So reach out to him. And it's o'conneladvisorygroup.com. Click the link in our show notes. Can't live without this.
Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. So coming to us all the way from Steamboat, Colorado. So for the listeners, you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up outside of Boulder in a little town called Niwot. Went to University of Arizona. Started my career at a company called Zayo Group, which was a roll-up of telecom assets. So they were kind of born of the telecom boom-bust cycle. I joined them during their consolidation phase, where they were acquiring a ton of different regional telecom companies, did financial planning and analysis for them, did a stint in investor relations. So was part of their kind of corporate finance team in a number of different roles for a few years. Got exposure into M&A and value creation through M&A during that stint. Ultimately, we had the largest IPO in Colorado history at the time. Wow. So a really awesome experience right out of college. I then moved into the consulting world, was at Slalom Consulting and Deloitte Consulting. I quit my job in October of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, to search for a small business to acquire. So did a self-funded search, ultimately closed on an acquisition in February of 2021, and operated a flooring business in Steamboat Springs, Colorado for a little over 3.5 years. Grew the revenue about 50%, doubled EBITDA, and ultimately exited for about a 24x MOIC in October of 24. So
congratulations, man.
Yeah, thank you. So that's the 2-minute elevator pitch of who I am and my background.
Well, then I guess that's the episode. We'll call it a wrap. No, so let's dive into that.
Let's end on that one.
So, so it sounds like you got the exposure for M&A, right? Really, it sounds like just from business, right? It wasn't that you had, a parent or somebody else that was really giving the exposure. You saw it in the business side. You understood the financial side of it, right? Because really, for business, there's two sides to it. There's the financial and number side of it, and then there's the operational side of it. And the most successful people are people that understand both, right? It's not just one or the other. And so I think you got that financial exposure from work, right? Kind of been through obviously the IPO yourself, plus on the consulting side. And then I guess that just what gave you the motivation, saying, hey, it's better for me to go off and try to buy my own business versus continue to work as a consultant? Or was there some other trigger there?
Yeah, I think in the middle of the pandemic there, I was just taking a look at my life and trying to forecast out 5, 10, 20 years. Is this something that I really want to do if I stay on this corporate track? Looked up to the senior partner above me, and is this a track that I really want to be on, and is this something that I would feel excited about 10 years from now, or would I regret not taking a risk? So I had a nice run in corporate America. I learned a lot. I felt like I was sort of going through the motions, most of the time. It was great. Like I said, I really was thankful for all the different stops I had, and was every single one learned a ton. But I felt like if I didn't take the leap and bet on myself, that I would regret it. And ultimately, I felt like it was now or never. I mean, I was engaged, wanted to take a leap before I started having a family, having kids. It was only going to get harder from that point on. So I felt like, okay, I'm young, got some energy. I've got a little bit of flexibility in my life where I can go and take a swing. So I quit my job, found this deal in Steamboat, raised SBA debt, levered it to the hilt, did 10% equity, 10% seller note, 80% SBA debt, closed on it. And yeah, I think to your point, I had a good sort of mix of operational experience. I think my consulting background kind of really helped me be able to analyze, where we can process, improve the business. My financials, FP&A side, I got really great just financial modeling skills and how to analyze a P&L and a balance sheet and manage all that. So just a lot of, I think, well-rounded skill set that I felt comfortable taking a leap. Obviously, I think I probably underestimated how hard it is to run a small business. It's one thing to be a consultant and to be, in spreadsheets all day, but to actually be managing people who are driving trucks around and installing carpet and flooring, it's a whole different ballgame. So definitely got punched in the teeth quite a bit, during my stint owning the business. But, I also had something I failed to mention earlier is, my parents were both entrepreneurs. They started businesses. So I got a little bit of exposure to the realities of entrepreneurship when I was a kid. So I don't think I was fully blind to it, but certainly, it's one thing to academically think about it and analyze it, and one thing to actually live it day to day.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have, my son is watched me through all my career, full entrepreneur, right? And we had a meeting probably about 4 years ago, a company I bought up in Oklahoma, and we were sitting down with our GM, and he was like, someone has to go, in front of my son while we were eating. Well, I got into a deep conversation, and then we got in the car. I looked at my son. I said, "So what'd you learn?" He was like, "I don't want to be an entrepreneur." It's like those things, like those, and I hope that that's not the case for him. But at the end of the day, you get those things from your parents, right? You get a chance to be around them and see those things. It does help. You call your dad and he's like, "Hey, dust yourself off, get back to work." He's like, "You signed the paperwork."
Getting punched in the guts pretty much daily. You just get used to it. So,
Sorry, I was just saying my dad, started companies, and mostly they failed, and so I got exposure to the realities of failure and just how painful it was. So one of the reasons why I wanted to go the acquisition route was, you're buying something that's existing and clearly has traction and product market fit. So that's one of the reasons that attracted me to the M&A space in the first place.
Got it. Yeah, and you found it a good time, man, because obviously I imagine 2020, right? The seller's probably like, "Oh man, I've got to get out of here at least at a reasonable price," right? And then you picked that upswing after 22 of, hey, all of those good things. I mean, how was that?
Well, so that's what I wanted to ask. So, I mean, tell us about, were you looking specifically for a flooring company or just any company in Colorado? And then what was the motivating factor for seller? Like, why were they selling? And then, what did the deal look like? How big was the company? How many employees? What was the EBITDA? What was the multiple that you bought it for, et cetera?
Yeah. So I did a search kind of throughout the Rocky Mountain region. So Arizona, New Mexico, up north through Idaho, Montana. So I looked at a bunch of stuff. I did not set out to acquire a flooring company. I looked at all sorts of different deals, painting companies. I looked at an art studio. I looked at a lot of stuff. And this one just made sense for me because one is in an awesome spot. I loved Steamboat Springs. I love Steamboat Springs, beautiful part of the world. I was living in Denver at the time, so it's close enough, but it wasn't like I was uprooting and moving to Arizona or Utah or something like that. So geographically, it made sense. It fit the sort of financial parameters that I had for my search. So I was looking for something that was in that sort of $500K to $1 million EBITDA SDE kind of range. So it was just a little bit above 500K. Ultimately acquired it for about 3 times. The reason the seller was wanting to get out was he was having pretty severe health problems. He's an older gentleman and needed to retire, and the business was just beating him up too much. So he had health issues, and that was sort of his main driver for selling. But yeah, I felt like this deal fit my parameters financially. I felt like it was a business that wasn't overly complicated or required some specific certification like an electrician kind of business might have. So I felt like it was just a kind of a sweet spot of something I can learn, wasn't overly complicated, awesome geography, place that I could see myself living. And I also just felt like there was a lot of tailwinds that were about to happen, which did play out, which was, COVID was happening, people moving out of the cities, they're moving up
Everybody wanted to remodel their house.
Yeah, they're moving up into the mountains. Everyone's remodeling their house. They're not going to work anymore, so remote work is huge, and Steamboat's an awesome place to work remotely. So a lot of great tailwinds at the same time.
Got it. So just to kind of maybe better recap. So 1.5 million was roughly the purchase price, right? You said you had 80% SBA.
80% SBA. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then basically for that last 20%, you brought 10%, and the seller carried 10%.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay, nice. So you 150K, you bought the business. You're there day one. What happens?
Oh, before we jump there, I want to talk about due diligence, because that's always like first time searcher, right? It's like, at least I can tell you my story of all the things I missed, on that due diligence. And I'm like, God dang it,
Yeah.
So what was your due diligence process? Like, never doing this before, did you go all in, Q of E, get all these reports, or did you kind of just back of the napkin?
I did do a QOE report that I would definitely recommend doing that. Just having an accountant's eyes on it, analyzing their bank statements. Ultimately, the bank statements tell the truth. But yeah, I mean, I felt pretty comfortable with the financial analysis of the business, just given my FP&A background. So I was really comfortable getting their financial statements, getting their tax returns, digging into the numbers. I felt like I had a pretty good handle of that. I would say, what I missed is just, is analyzing where the business gets its revenue, where the leads come from. Like, is the phone ringing at the shop? Is the phone ringing on the owner's cell phone? Where are these relationships coming from? So I would say I definitely had a little bit of a miss there. And just I think I probably was a little overconfident in my ability to run this business. Just given that I had never ran a flooring store before, I knew nothing about flooring.
Did it have a retail store too?
Yeah, it's a retail showroom, warehouse operation, so kind of combined into one flex space. But yeah, I think due diligence wise, overall, I think I did a pretty good job, but definitely some misses on probably just my ability to actually run it.
What about the seller? Did he stay on with you for a bit?
He stayed on for 2-3 months. Eventually,
he moved quick.
Yeah, he moved pretty quick. Honestly, I felt like after a while, I was like, all right, man, I think I got this. Like, just, go. You can go home early today. It's probably more confusion for the employees than it's worth, from a leadership perspective. So yeah.
How many? I guess the two things. How did you guys solve net working capital and inventory? Right? Was it just was that an easy conversation, or was there complexities there?
That's a good question.
And how much revenue was the business doing?
So yeah, I bought about 200K of inventory on top of the 1.5. So like the total purchase price was 1.7.
Got it.
So the equity that I brought to the table is a little less than 200K. Sorry, what was the second part of that question?
And then kind of networking capital. What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, so basically he took all of his accounts receivable. He took his cash. The inventory is really the only networking capital that I bought.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't a networking capital conversation.
So you had to bring cash to closing to move the bills on.
Yeah. So
make sure you can pay payroll that first week, right? First month.
So yeah, I brought 100K of cash to just park on the balance sheet just to have, a little bit of cushion. Had the $200K of inventory. So net, like all in the capital that we brought to the table was about $300K day one.
Got it.
Okay. The revenue was a little over $3 million. So yeah.
Okay. So roughly, 1/6 of kind of margins. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then I guess, so maybe shifting gears, right? So you buy the business, you get in there. What were some of the mistakes and what were some of the big kind of positive impacts that you started doing, right? And how quickly did you start making that? Because that's really the most common thing that happens is either people make changes really quickly and then that has its own problems, or they make changes too slowly and that has its own problems. And it's kind of trying to find that balancing act, right? And it varies by business.
Yeah. So I think I did a pretty good job of balancing that. My sort of philosophy going into it was do no harm. So I basically just spent the first, I would say 3 months just learning the business, like getting in the weeds, literally writing tickets, processing orders, just learning it from a very like ground up perspective. My consulting sort of background, I think, really helped me with just, process flows and like just tell me how someone buys a carpet job, and just going through each step of the process, learning how we do it. You can start to circle, okay, this sounds like this is broken, probably fix it here. So I say 3 months, didn't really do much. After that, started making some pretty significant improvements on the technology stack that we were using. So, when I walked into the store day one, it was just papers flying all over the place. It's kind of like your typical, stereotypical SMB that's running on a fax machine and paper, right? So I had to pretty quickly tame that beast because there's just no way that I could operate a business like that. It was just too chaotic. So we installed a system called Notion to kind of help, just be a sort of a basic CRM tool, basic purchasing operations tool, internal documentation tool.
I'm surprised you chose Notion because that's not really tailored for the vertical, right? Notion's really putty that you have to mold yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was putty that like it's so moldable that I liked it. Like just given my background, I did Salesforce.com projects in my consulting days. So just having that sort of CRM and systems.
So yeah, you had a little bit of technical background to understand that.
Exactly. So I had like a technical background where I could like mold this into what I needed it to be at the time.
Yeah. The problem with Salesforce is you need a developer to do the molding, whereas Notion, it's you don't have to be a developer. It's more of a strategist.
The thing about the CRM though, also early in your journey, it helps you know everything about the company from soup to nuts. When you build that out, like you now know everything.
Exactly.
So it's a good start right in the company is to make that change, right? Because it also takes a lot of time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I could spin it up pretty quickly. It was so user friendly. It's just easy to train people. And then, like I would say there was some cultural pushback to it. Everyone's like, oh, I don't like this. I don't want to learn it. And, there were some people that were kind of hemming and hawing about it. But overall, like once I built it out and showed them how I'm thinking about it and how it could be useful for everybody, how it keep us more organized and communicate better internally, people saw the value. And it was a huge improvement over flipping through, stacks of paper and file cabinets and stuff like that, trying to figure out whether a purchase order was actually ordered. And so,
efficiency gain's insane. And that's probably why you saw your massive growth. Not only that, but it's like, holy crap, we are so much more efficient.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we're spending, I did other things like pretty quickly, within a few months, I brought on an offshore resource to help me just manage the rote day-to-day tasks of ordering product. We had like our sales associates in the showroom sitting on hold for 20 minutes, just trying to order a trim piece for, flooring, and that's just a bad use of their time. They could be doing that, they could be following up with the customer and closing a lead and, doing things that are revenue producing and just, administrative things like that. Pretty quickly, moved it into this Notion system, got offshore resources to help me manage it better. And just with those two things alone, I mean, those were really big in process improvements.
Yeah, and not to go on a tangent, but you should definitely check out I forget what Google called it. They did a demo last week at Go I/O, but essentially it's kind of what their future assistant they want to try to get it to do. And it's very much getting close to being able to do things like go call this number, order this trim piece, let me know once it's done. And it'll sit there, it'll wait, it'll do the whole shebang. And, it'll pipe you in if there's a problem or when it's done. But it's actually pretty cool where some of that tooling is getting there for some of those kinds of tasks, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this was pre AI,
Yeah.
so like 2021, 2022, this is before like ChatGPT changed the world. But yeah, I mean, just those things alone, like were a really big change for the business.
So kind of going into, because ultimately, you end up selling the business. So in that time, you come in, you lay a foundation. Would you say that new foundation with CRM, 18 months, 12 months, is that really where you were kind of laying the foundation?
Yeah, I would say 12 months of process improvement work. During that time, there was some, and this is kind of the ugly part of the good, bad, and the ugly. There was some turnover with key employees, guys that I kind of like were really important key players in the business when I was doing due diligence. Some kind of things blew up with some key employees, and in a small town and in a small business like that, that's pretty disruptive. So had some turnover with employees, which we had to navigate. So during that time, during the sort of transition phase, a lot of new technology changes, a lot of turnover with the staff, but ultimately all good stuff that led to a stronger company, a stronger foundation, something that was more robust than it was before, less reliant on key people, focused on sort of lead generation efforts, and honestly just basic things like getting more Google reviews from customers, figuring out how to better serve customers so that we are reliably getting 5-star reviews. So client delivery experience got a lot better. Lead generation, lead conversion processes got a lot better. So just a little bit of everything throughout the sort of transition phase through the first 2 years, just chipping away at making the business overall more robust and more able to, be a real business, not just a business that's relying on 2 key employees.
Got it. So then I guess, and that's the thing, right? Early on, someone leaves and you freak out, and then you realize, man, it's actually great that they did that because it forced you to actually go solve the problem versus just continue to lean on the pain that was already there, right?
But it's
Totally,
painful.
yeah.
It's painful. It's like, wow. Especially when you rely and you depend on somebody, and then they don't like change, which is your number one killer, right? It's change. They're like, hey, I'm done. I couldn't imagine in a small town. It's not like you can just go get a recruiter and start recruiting. We're in Houston. So it's like finding people's a little easier. You probably had to like start somebody from the ground up and get them up to speed.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I, like you said, firing this guy that ultimately didn't work out. It was scary. He had a lot of leverage in the business. He had a lot of existing accounts that really liked him. A lot of people came to the store just because they liked him. So this guy had a lot of, political capital and leverage in the business. So it was scary to move on from him, but ultimately it was the best thing that could have happened. We were less reliant on a toxic relationship, build better systems and processes to, fill in the void that he left behind. I hired a guy. I actually recruited him from Texas, and he ended up being a really bad decision and culture fit. So I swung for the fences for some white knight that's going to come in and grow the business and send us to the moon, and that ended up just totally falling on its face and was an absolute disaster. So a lot of bad hiring choices that I made, namely that one. But through it all, we continue to grow, continue to do well, serve customers. Like you can.
You
make
must have had a
mistakes.
good product. You guys must have done that part.
Yeah, I mean, were you more retail focused or enterprise?
More retail, yeah. So
Okay.
we had, we're it's a small town. You have to have a good word of mouth and reputation. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
It's a little loaded, right? I mean, there's not a lot of others of what you were doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's limited competition. A lot of the contractors in town aren't necessarily the most sophisticated guys in the world. But yeah, I mean, we did a good job for our customers, and I think ultimately that's kind of what carried us through everything.
Well, before you jump on, I just want to say, so for our listeners, right, this is very important. And Feras and I just literally had this conversation 2 weeks ago. It's like you cannot be scared to let go of people because if they are not a fit, the best thing you can do is move them along for both of you, right? It's not anything personal. And I think that was a big thing you just kind of said right there, right? I mean, we had a very, very important person on our team that we recently lost. And for like 3 days, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awful, right? But it's actually ended up being the best thing that could have happened because there wasn't a cultural fit where we were going and where he wanted to go. It just didn't fit. But I mean, I was literally like, oh my God. And I've been through this 3 times, right? And
And
I'm
then now we
still
have a
just like,
much better option
and
too.
we opened the door. And so it's kind of like that thing where
We had the
like,
white knight show up.
The white knight, well, we feel so far, it feels that way. But it's, it's kind of like what my wife says, like, hey, let's clean out the house. Just get rid of everything that's just there. And guess what? Next year, it'll all be back. It's like it just opens up, but it's different stuff. And it's opening.
Tell me what day you guys are cleaning up, and I'll be there.
Hey, we're
later that
cleaning up on
evening,
Friday.
and
We're going down to our new company that we
pick up-
bought. We're doing a big cleanup, and so we
I'm
bought
gonna
a
pick
big
up Casey's
dumpster.
52-inch TV because he wants to upgrade to the 56-inch, and kind of go.
But no, it's a good point, Chris. And so I kind of want to let you just mention that because that was a big thing for us and for the listeners that are listening. It's like, what are those key takeaways? I'll tell you right now. It's like, the company should be, it's an organism, and you want to have people inside of that organism that help the company grow. But if someone's not a part of the culture, you got to move them on, even if it feels like you're going to lose.
It's critical. I mean, just to add on to what you're saying, it was one of those things that's just nagging at me for months. I mean, really, probably a year of just like, I honestly, it was a bad toxic working relationship, but I just felt like I can't get rid of him. He's too key to the company. And
exactly the situation with the person we're talking about. Same thing.
Yeah,
so
yeah, and it sucks, and you feel like you're beholden to this guy, and like, you're working for him more than the other way around. It's not good. So my advice to your listeners out there is, when these nagging situations are happening, and in your gut what you need to do. And my recommendation is do it sooner. And like the longer you wait, the more it's going to fester, and the worse it's going to be for your company. So can't agree with you enough.
I'll give you one more example of like another way I've heard it said, which actually I really like, which is if you were to, in your situation, if you were to create a brand new flooring company from scratch, right? You talked about you're doing everything. Is that the person that you would call for that position? If the answer is no, then you probably don't have the right person to begin with, right? So, internalize that and make the decisions. But maybe moving along. So, ultimately 3 years later, right? Where did you grow the company to? And at what point in time did you decide, I want to make an exit here, right? And how, did you do anything to start preparing for that?
Ultimately we grew it to a little over 4.5 million. So kind of on a
revenue.
Annualized of revenue. Yeah. So we grew to 4.5 million of revenue. We grew it to 1.1 million of SDE. So,
Nice.
double.
That's a big jump, man.
Yeah. Double profitability.
Because you increased, and I just want to say you increased revenue by $1 million, but your efficiency gain was doubled even.
Increased revenue 30%, but increased margins 100%, right?
Yeah, well, it's more like about 50%.
Increased profit 100%. Sorry,
we were about 3 million, so we grew to 4.5, so it's 50% increase, and then double SDE. So so I mean, revenue we grew, I think, pretty well. I think we could have done a lot better looking back on it, but to your point, really what I think we did a great job at is just improving efficiency and making the business a lot more profitable. So doubling SDE was awesome. Ultimately I felt like I wanted to really grow a business that is scalable to, theoretically multiple locations and grow past what we were doing. I felt like we had kind of tapped out the market that we were in Steamboat. There's only about 10,000 people there. So it's a small market. And if I was going to go open up a new showroom or store, I felt like it wasn't the brand or the sort of business model that I wanted to ride. So I kind of came to a crossroads. It was like, okay, do I keep this? Do I install a GM, and kind of go focus elsewhere? And I came to the conclusion that I would rather monetize it and move on to a new project. So, it was a pretty quick decision after the holidays in 2024. My wife and I kind of got together and we decided that this is what we wanted to do. We were just having our second kid, felt like we wanted to move back to the Front Range of Colorado outside of Boulder. And ultimately we felt like it's best for us to monetize this. We had grown it. We had done a good job. We felt like we could get a good exit for it. and take the proceeds of that, roll it into the next project, wipe our hands clean of it so we're not being distracted by it, and move on to the next chapter of life.
And what was the time frame when you made that to you actually closed? How long did that take?
We probably decided we wanted to sell it, like I say, April 24. It ultimately closed beginning of October. So it was a pretty quick process. It was about like 5 months.
Hire a broker, or did you do it all yourself?
Yep, we hired a broker from Transworld, and it's actually the same broker that I used, or that was on the when I bought.
Yeah. That's good, because that guy will be your broker for life, right? He'll bring you stuff in the future. So always make sure to take care of on both sides of it.
Exactly.
And so ultimately, what was the exit?
We exited for about $4 million. So
Nice.
Yeah, we ultimately it ended up being about a 24x multiple on invested capital.
Yeah. That's the beauty of leverage, right? So
yeah, obviously leverage is a huge part of that, but
you also got the EBITDA arbitrage, right? So you went from a 3x to a 4x, right? You see, that's the beauty there, and that's because you enhanced your EBITDA above $1 million, and that's that's that magic that allowed you to get that trade, which is great, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we pulled a lot of cash out of the business. We got a little, we had the multiple expansion. So yeah, I mean, ultimately it was a really great, exit and chapter for my family.
And how did the employees take it? Were they like, "Oh shit, we're going through another sale," or was it did you do it differently? Did you kind of walk the guys? I mean, because you went through that experience, how did you handle it?
Yeah, I try to make it as smooth as possible for the buyers. Wanted to make it as positive as possible. There was a little bit of turnover day one. One person in particular didn't react super well to it, but everyone else stayed. I think the culture and the team handled it pretty well. Obviously, that's a shakeup, and that's a kind of a scary thing for everybody involved. But overall, I think the transition period was smooth, and I wanted to make sure that I was handing over the business in as good a shape as possible.
Beautiful. Got it. And I'm guessing you didn't tell the employees till it was already said and done?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So wrapping up before we go to our rocket round, tell us what you're doing right now. Because you said you're building your own company from scratch, and there's always that theory: buy then build or start at one.
0 to 1 or 1 to 2.
So where you're obviously at 0 to 1 right now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I would like to, on this next swing, start something from the get-go that I feel is a really great infrastructure for growth. So I would rather, at this point in my life, start something, build it what I believe to be correctly, and hopefully it grows, and it is kind of that model where it can be scalable to multiple locations. So that's what I'm doing right now. I felt like the buying and growing was awesome, but I sort of felt like I would be better served long-term to build something the way that I want it to be built, grow it slowly, not have the leverage over my head and, debt payments and all that kind of stuff, which can be a little bit scary.
It's super scary, especially when that interest rate goes from, because you bought in 22. So your interest rate went from 6.25 to 11. Was that about right?
Well, I bought in 21, and my SBA loan was amazing. It was 5%, and it was just the timing was incredible. Now it's 9, whatever. So it's, it's a lot scarier now, to buy and lever up a business with that huge interest rate. So I feel like my timing was incredible with interest rates being 0 in 21. So yeah. With that, I've got a little bit of capital, I've got a little bit of runway. I've got some money where I can, support my family during this building process and, build it slowly, build it right, less leverage, and hopefully it pans out the way I like.
Exciting, man.
Do you want to share what space it's in, or still waiting to kind of announce it?
Flooring. Yeah. So staying
still in the flooring space. All right.
Cool. Yeah. So you became an expert. Now you got an idea. You got a concept.
Yeah, I got a concept. I got sort of the model that I like, and I want to keep compounding in flooring. I think it's a good industry, a good business, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in the flooring space. It's super fragmented, a lot of
very fragmented.
A lot of sort of legacy, sort of mom and pop shops out there. So there's a lot to like about the industry.
And I have a friend who's focused on the distribution side on the East Coast, and he's done well, just picking up some of these mom and pops and just really scaling out the distribution side. And his biggest problem is finding the actual installers on the back end side, right? Because a lot of times people want to buy in bulk, but they also want to line up the installer. And so, but I mean, he's done very well in that space.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hopefully
Chris,
I'm a success story as well.
Amazing story. So we're going to jump right now into our rocket round. This is where we ask our guests 3 questions to learn more about them. So Chris, real quick, what do you like to do in your free time?
I like to snowboard, I like to play tennis, hang out with I've got 2 daughters, so hang out with my daughters and my wife. But yeah, kind of right now living the steamboat life, skiing, snowboarding, playing tennis and weightlifting. So I've got a pretty boring life right now with being a dad of 2 young girls, but that's pretty much all
boring
I do.
Is good. Boring is good, you know. Good for you.
Yeah, I was up in your neck of the woods in January, and I was there during that Arctic freeze, and so it was a very cold couple of days of snowboarding.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
All right. Next question. Most memorable moment in your business journey?
I would say firing that key employee and staring down the barrel a little bit. So yeah, that's definitely the most memorable.
Whew, that's no fun.
Yeah.
All right. And then what is your favorite tool or resource?
I gotta say Notion. I'm a huge Notion fanboy. So much you can use. It's just an awesome tool. If you're creative with it, you can do so many things with it. So from a software perspective, definitely Notion.
Yeah, no, I listened to the This Week in Startup podcast, right, with Jason Calcanis, and Notion's one of the sponsors, and he does the whole pitch for it. And I played with it a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I'm surprised to hear that you built a CRM through. So did you, maybe on that tangent, did you build out billing and emailing capabilities through Notion as well?
Well, no, we haven't. So like billing and
your data hub.
We did that separately, but like it's kind of like the data hub. It's where a lot of automations can take place. So yeah, there's a ton you can do with it.
And I'm asking because I just don't even know if it's supported. So if it did, I was like, okay, that's actually really cool.
Yeah, we can take it offline and I can nerd out with Notion with you.
Cool. All right. Well, Chris, thank you very much. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Twitter. My handle is @Toph_Edwards, TOPH_Edwards. Or you can email me, Chris at sanitasequity.com, SANITAS equity.com.
Perfect. All right, we'll put that in the show notes.
Well, Chris, great meeting you, having you here on the show. Hopefully we get to meet in person at one of our conferences that we're throwing. We'd love to have you come out. And really, thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to meet you guys in person. And thanks for
November 1st. You hear it first. We locked out the date, so it's a brand new announcement.
All right, I'll be
Chicago.
there.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Casey. Thanks, Feras.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.